Welcome to Ignite the CEO Within, the podcast where we dive deep into the minds of top business leaders to ignite your inner CEO. I'm your host, Mark McFatridge, founder of Quaid, and with each episode, we bring you inspiring conversations with CEOs and business owners who share their experiences, insights, and lessons learned along the way. Get ready to be motivated, empowered, and equipped with the tools you need to succeed in your own leadership journey. Let's ignite the CEO within you. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Igniting the CEO Within. I'm Mark McFatridge, founder and CEO of Quaid, and your host for the next 30 minutes or so. Really excited. We've got another special episode for you today. Prior to President Trump taking office, I sat down with Jared Lodehold and Tim Day, two members of the Ice Miller team. They both focus on public affairs and government relations, and our goal with that episode was to preview what the change in administration might mean for small to mid-sized businesses. And they did an amazing job. And now that we are, a little over 100 days in, I thought it would make sense for us to bring in a couple more experts to dive into where we are now and what we could potentially expect going forward. So joining me today are Michael Stroud and Joe Heaton from the law firm of Ice Miller. Michael is a partner with the firm focusing on governmental relations, tariffs, trade, and a whole lot of other things. He is a proud Cornell grad with his law degree from George Washington School of Law, and he offices out of the Ice Miller office in Washington, D.C. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, Mark.
Joe Heaton serves as of counsel in the Ice Miller, Washington, D.C. office. He has extensive experience in governmental affairs and international relations, an Ohio native, so he's here from the Midwest, graduating from Miami University, and then also the Dickinson School of Law from Penn State University. Joe, really pumped to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Excited to talk to trade and Trump.
Fun, all the T's, right? It's great. Well, gentlemen, as I mentioned, we had a couple of your teammates on the show earlier in the year, right before President Trump took office, Tim Day and Jared Lodehold, and they provided some great insights and potential expectations for what this new administration could mean for small to mid-sized businesses. They both nailed some things that have either happened or in process of happening. But honestly, I have to give a lot of flowers to Jared here. I'm gonna read a quote directly from where he came from when I asked about potential uncertainty. He says, "There's still a lot of uncertainty, right? Based on who's appointed and the principal himself. It's like there's a certain level of unpredictability that I think comes with President-elect Trump. Substantively, I would say two issues kind of jump out to me is trade and tariffs, and the other one is immigration. Because of just how interconnected our economies are and our supply chains, a lot of companies are importing goods from places that are probably going to be, or at least threatened with initially to date. But I think the president will actually follow through with what he says." Not bad, huh? He did okay. I think he nailed it. So let's just start there, Michael. Can you maybe give me an overview of what's going on in DC right now? What is the lay of the land? Are there issues that you see are keeping your clients up at night, especially in regard to trade enforcement and compliance?
Sure. Yes. I think I think Jared got it right. We work with Jared a lot, so that sounds exactly like a quote that he would say, and I think he was spot on there that the tariff and trade issues are the ones that are causing people the most confusion and uncertainty. So really what we've seen in DC is starting with the America First trade policy, right? Which to the trade lawyers in the room, you read that and you could see that some of this has language around indicating that there will probably be a renegotiation of USMCA. There's a portion of that executive order that reads like the official notice needed under the USMCA to initiate renegotiation. So that's one area that we know is going to probably be coming up. We also see in there's a very clear discussion about trade enforcement laws. These are the anti-dumping, countervailing duty laws, as well as export control laws. all of those are included in that trade America First trade policy, and it indicates that all existing practices will be revisited. So that means that those of us and practitioners and clients alike, and industries and companies, particularly small ones, that are watching what's happening with trade enforcement cases like price dumping cases, things may change in your existing investigation or case, and you don't know yet. So these cases are not governed by these cases are governed by statute, which means that they have set deadlines and they just continue to move. So that causes a lot of uncertainty with respect to small and medium-sized businesses, especially those that are importing from potentially some of the countries that could be impacted. The other area that I see that's kind of interesting there is the discussion that we're going to revisit and renegotiate all existing trade agreements. That's a massive undertaking, right? It was very clear, and it is now, right, not even 2 months later, that revisiting all trade agreements really is a literal revisiting of all trade agreements. Not to be negative on it, but I think that causes uncertainty for a lot of people. And it causes uncertainty for a lot of supply chains and companies that, particularly smaller companies that can both be versatile in their production, but they don't have the buying power or the supply power that larger companies do. So it makes it tougher for them to move their supply chains and to obtain manufacturing capacity or throughput at a foreign manufacturing site. So those are some of the things that we see, and I think those are some of the things that are causing people consternation and some confusion. And of course, the most recent executive order with the Annex 1 list of all the countries that would be their tariff rates caused a lot of angst amongst a lot of our clients and other companies across the country.
When you look, thank you for that. When you look at even the possibility of renegotiating or evaluating all of these different trade agreements, how do you even go about that? I mean, is there a priority list of just sheer numbers, or is it alphabetical? Like, how do you even go about that? On the surface it sounds like a ludicrous statement, but as you said, it's happening.
No, it's a very good question, right? I mean, I think if you were to logically start, you might say, okay, what countries did we already have free trade agreements with, right? I mean, I think I would start there, and then I think you can see some of those countries that are generally, some of them are small, but some of them are strategic, and I think some of those countries that do not have a ton of necessarily manufacturing or market access bars. Would be the easiest to take care of, but they're also the least amount of, in some ways, return sometimes. I think, I guess I would also subdivide that group into the ones that the previous Trump administration negotiated. And one I've been talking a lot about but is Japan. If you think that Lighthizer got Japan wrong the first time around, then there's going to be some significant corrections to that agreement this time around. But Japan is a very strategic partner to the United States, plays a very strategic role in the Asian economy, but also in the interim, since we retracted from the TTP, Japan was able to put together a trade deal with the EU, China, and Korea as well. So or not Korea, but some of the other countries in the region, and that makes it a bit more challenging because we have the issues with China as well. So I think the best way to start that is to almost start looking at where we were before, which agreements the Trump administration has started with prior, and which ones we think that they got right pretty much the first time around versus the ones that had significant challenges or have been big factual changes. The other one that I'll throw out there that is not talked about a lot is that there really could be some great opportunity here too. So, for example, a U.S.-UK free trade agreement, now that the UK is squarely outside of the EU and is a long-time trading partner and strategic partner to the United States, I think that timing is right. And if you're the Trump administration, you're looking for a very significant win and you're looking to land some of these planes, as you indicated, with 193 countries in the world, including the I forget the name of the country that is mostly penguins. But, if we're going to be negotiating with all those countries, we have to start someplace, and we have to get the greatest amount of return on that investment of time and effort, because these are not easy things to do. So I think there could be some really great opportunities for like a US-UK free trade agreement.
Yeah, I like that. I do want to come back and talk about potential opportunities, but before we go there, Joe, would like to lean on you a little bit of, let's start out one way is, do you see other countries kind of uniting against the U.S. in some of these trade agreements? Are they building their own alliances, I guess, for lack of a better word, to combat the tariffs and other trade restrictions that the U.S. is starting to put together?
I do think that most of what we're seeing in terms of reaction is the threat of retaliatory tariffs on American goods. So not necessarily as much, foreign alliances, building trade blocs. There are already a number of those in place, like the EU, for example, right? But I do think that you are seeing various countries really increase their engagement in Washington, D.C., talk to the federal government in a way that they've never talked to the U.S. federal government before. Beyond just official channels, using embassy, USTR, and the State Department, et cetera, Department of Commerce, the other agencies that have kind of jurisdiction over tariff issues. I think we're also in this really unique pause position right now, where between now and July, where I think a lot of countries are really starting to take a hard look at their trade strategy and what they need to be doing. And a lot of back channel conversations are happening with the Trump administration. A lot of front channel conversations are happening with the Trump administration too. But countries are definitely, I think, seeing this as a long-term problem, meaning a problem that's going to last the entire administration, and that they need to get in front of it now, as opposed to just wait until they need to react more. That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Joe, what other challenges are you seeing for your clients right now?
Well, I think the biggest problem that we're seeing business wide is the climate of uncertainty, right? Like that's what CEOs hate the most, right? Is the inability to predict the future, and to be able to plan for the future. And so that, I think, is the largest problem. And if you don't know between now and July, what's going to happen with a specific country, or you're sourcing things from a specific country, it presents a lot of challenges, because you don't know day to day how the president is going to, impose a tariff or not impose a tariff. We're seeing things, trade policy done over, X and Signal, right? And then we're not getting any paper about it until, a week or two later. So I think that level of uncertainty is a huge problem that we're seeing across the board with all of our clients. I would say the other issue that I think is causing concern is basically the issue of kind of the lack of, and this kind of goes to the uncertainty question, but the kind of disruptive nature of how the president imposes certain types of policies. Like, he's a disruptor, right? Like, that's what he likes to do. And he has disruptors within his cabinet. And I think that can be oftentimes very scary when you have, if you're an airplane company, for example, and you have had contracts in place for 5-6 years to source parts from different places. You can't just flip that switch on and off, right? So if like something happens over Twitter or Signal, one day and then it changes the next day, that is really disruptive to business planning. And so I think like it's not just the kind of overall general uncertainty of what's going on in Washington and like where tariffs are going to go. It is literally the day to day. What is the president going to say, and how am I going to have to react to that?
Yeah. Interesting. Do you is the way he's going about it? Is that a game plan? Like, is that a plan, or is he's certainly not winging it, right? I mean,
No, I don't think he's winging it. And Mark,
Yeah.
you and I talked about this, but kind of before we started recording, like, the administration came in with a plan this time, right? In 2016, I think there was less realization that the win was going to happen, and there was a ramp up period. they've been now waiting 4 years of the Biden administration, planning what they're going to do when they win. And now that they've won, they're implementing a plan. And I do think that part of that is a disruptive nature in terms of how they communicate with people. But I do think that that is, again, part of the strategy. I think he really likes keeping people on their toes. He really likes, surprising industry or surprising folks, via social media or, in meetings, et cetera. I mean, you've seen this, across the board. It's not just trade. I mean, the famous Zelensky meeting, that was like, that would have never happened in any sort of, prior administration. Everything would have been like very planned out. Trump likes to, just kind of keep people's feet to the fire by surprising them and really kind of creating a culture of, I wouldn't say chaos, but uncertainty in terms of how he's going about his policymaking. But again, I do think that's part of his strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael, anything else you would add on that piece?
On the uncertainty part, or the
Yeah.
the sort of intended the in the
Well,
in
they're
the
all
in the, in the,
interrelated,
counter, in the
right?
counterintelligence and security world, we would have a phrase of being predictably unpredictable, which negates the ability to have a good counter strategy against you, if you will. And I firmly believe that the administration is subscribing to that philosophy of being predictably unpredictable, mainly because I think that they are looking for to transform. Part of this is in economics, like lecture of a PhD, right? If we want to make America a manufacturing hub again, right, that would require massive amounts of money. But if you don't want to add to the budget and the deficit, because what we're really talking about here is the tax bill. So let's not forget about that. If you're not able to spend that money to do that, and you can get others to do that for you, then that's sort of the goal, right? And being predictably unpredictable, it's causing all of the international trade partners to start to figure out what can they do to become predictable with respect to the United States. I mean, I think, again, I'm going to go back to Japan, and I would really say that the real issue here, I think, is not about Japan. The real issue that's going to drive us forward, and I think the Asian markets is going to be is really the critical mineral rights coming out of Ukraine. Why? Because that is the thing that China uses right now as a bludgeon against some of our pro trading partners in the region, particularly South Korea and Japan. If we have the ability to access some of the Ukrainian rare earth minerals and critical minerals, plus we've seen a recent EO to begin extracting those off the United States coastal shelf, that actually will be a way to kind of wedge back into the Asian region and potentially extract a few changes. I mean, there are obviously some technical changes with respect to the Japanese tax system and things like that, but when we look at it, that's a long-term trading partner that, again, if you think Ambassador Lighthizer got the deal wrong the last time, which I don't think he did, then I think that's probably a place where we're looking to have a multiple effect here. But at the same time, by announcing to Vietnam that we might have a 46% tariff rate, that is causing massive amounts of confusion and uncertainty amongst manufacturers that have initially moved from China to Vietnam to look for a different supply chain, diversify, and what have you. And that's really impacting small businesses, because those are the ones that were able to get into some of that production capacity early on. So I think that predictably unpredictable is causing a lot more people to come to the table and try to essentially try to get their agreement done early. How do I get out of this line? And when I was initially talking about, like, you said, where do I start? I mean, like, I don't think Oman is like a huge trading partner for the United States, right? I mean, we technically had a free trade agreement with Oman, but yes, is it in the oil patch region and all that? Yes. So, like, do we see something with Israel happening? Potentially, especially now that we know that we've, again, Joe and I put out a little sort of a crystal ball blurb on this, but the fact that we relocated part of the bomber fleet, the B-1 bomber fleet, to Doha, to Qatar, ahead of the agreement of the meeting with Iran and Israel, that's a very big indicator that and Iran and Israel saying, well, if we don't have an agreement in place on this conflict issue, we're going to do something else. So you can imagine too that that's going to have a direct impact on, maybe reviving or revisiting the U.S.-Israel free trade agreement, right? So that certainly countries are using any opportunity they can to advance their economic interests, especially as they are intertwined with the United States. But Joe and I also deal with a lot of clients that they're, like we said, they're using this as an opportunity to revisit how are our products being made, what are we doing with those products, where are they coming from, and so I think those things, the predictably unpredictable is going to cause the administration to get some wins, and I think that's what they're hoping for.
We'll dive back into the conversation in just a moment, but first, a quick word from one of our strategic partners, Ice Miller. For more than a century, Ice Miller has helped clients navigate the full range of legal and business issues they face. Whether it be in the boardroom or the courtroom, our lawyers have evolved with the marketplace, providing sound counsel when you need it the most. Though our Midwest roots run deep, we serve clients from coast to coast and bring to bear international capabilities and insights. As a cohesive team, Ice Miller stands ready to provide cutting-edge legal solutions tailored to you. Learn more at icemiller.com. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Shifting gears, and Mike, you started to go down this path, is there are some opportunities out there. Joe, what, if I look at you, what opportunities are there for U.S.-based businesses, both small and mid-size, that are out there that exist today?
Well, I think the first thing is that it provides an opportunity to revisit supply chains. And a lot of folks, have settled into, a certain type of supply chain with, certain ingredients or certain inputs coming from specific countries. And that's just how they've been doing business for a long time. And this is certainly causing everybody to really reevaluate whether or not those supply chains are the best way to go. I also think that, to Michael's earlier point, we've got some opportunities with some countries like the UK, for example, with the potential free trade agreement. If I'm a business owner, I'm looking at some of those countries where there could be an opportunity for more favorable trade agreements and looking at whether or not there's a business opportunity within those countries. So I do think there's, some forward thinking that can happen through all of this. And again, we're talking a lot about the chaos and the turbulence that we're going through right now. But I do think that, if you can, pinpoint, specific countries, I think that's a good way of starting to look at where you should be sourcing. And then also, reevaluating what are your business models here within the United States too, right? I think the president, before he's a Republican or a Democrat, is always a populist. And I think, he wants to do what's best for, the guy in Dayton, Ohio, where I'm from, right? Where NAFTA still is a dirty word, so many years after the fact. And, that's a part of the country where we've seen auto manufacturing offshored. We've seen nearly everything offshored. I think it's an opportunity for some businesses to take a look at what does it mean to invest in America again. And are there opportunities domestically that maybe didn't otherwise exist? Michael talked about how this is tied into the tax bill that Ways and Means and Senate Finance is currently undertaking and debating. This should be looked at in terms of, is there potential favorable tax treatment that people can take advantage of if they're more domestic than foreign. So I do think there's some lanes that people can look at. And certainly I think, good CEOs and good companies right now are really taking advantage of not only trying to figure out the world around them in terms of Trump, but also figuring out, are there places where they can play and maybe expand opportunities using this trade agenda as a tool.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks. Michael, what type, your clients, what are those conversations looking like today? What are they coming and talking to you about? What are they inquiring about? Where are they looking? What are those conversations looking like today?
Sure. Yes. I mean, just obviously can't reveal attorney-client communication, but just anonymizing that somewhat into some of the general categories that we're fielding. We've had clients that have asked us a lot related to customs issues. And when I say that, I mean, yes, they're asking, hey, what is the tariff rate on this on this item that we're about to import, or our leading product that we're selling, right? Like our flagship product. What is the price of that? What is the tariff that we're facing on that? And what we're doing is we're finding a lot of times that we're helping our clients go back in and analyze how much content there might be in that product. Where is it actually being produced? And I think from the first Trump administration to now, unless lest we forget that the 301 tariffs continued on through the Biden administration. So it is not as if we just, on the last day of the Trump administration, everything was turned off. These have continued, right? So a lot of companies, and I think really mid-size and small CEOs, have become much more savvy on trade issues than they have probably anticipated. Other than just, they become more detailed about things such as, where's my product coming from? How many days is it going to be at sea? How long? What's my delivery time? So those kinds of questions are the ones that we're seeing. But also in addition to that, the customs questions that we're seeing are actually, we're talking about some of these benefits, are where some clients are actually realizing, you know what, we've been entering this product under the wrong heading for a long time, or for some period of time. And we now have an opportunity to fix that. And also because of the way that some of the executive orders are written and some of the way that the customs implementation guidance is written, we may be trying to help a client locate or identify what we call tariff shift, which may or may not get them out of the tariff, of the applicability of the tariff. And in that case, and in some of those instances where they do have the shift, they're saving on the tariff side, and they're also realizing that maybe they had a problem with the way their product was entered. So those are some of the opportunities to really kind of clean up and figure out and revisit some of your very perfunctory supply chain issues. But some clients are doing that. The other part we're finding is that some clients are starting to understand, this is what Joe and I talk a lot about too, is not just strategic sourcing, but strategic location. And by this, we're talking about taking advantage of these very narrow windows of opportunity. In the first Trump administration, and even through the Biden administration, there's usually these periods of time before new tariffs come into place, whether it's a window or like what we call as product on the water kind of a terminology, meaning that, well, for shipments that are already underway or inbound to the United States, we're going to give a certain period of days before we put these new tariff rates in place. Well, to Joe's point, this administration came in on day one and said, oh, our windows of our windows for these tariffs will be, hours, days, maybe, not weeks, not months. So what we're doing is helping clients identify, for those that have a real good sense of their supply chain, how long it takes for their products to get to the United States, how can they use a bonded warehouse or foreign trade zone to keep their product available outside of the tariff regime until there's a precise opportunity where they might be able to enter it at a reduced rate or no rate. So that kind of strategic advice is something that we're providing to them too. So that's kind of a summary of some of this. I think there's also just some discussions about how clients could move production and how clients could take advantage of different parts of the USMCA region, for example. So those are some of the issues that we're dealing with.
Mark, I would add to that, and this doesn't come from a client of ours, but I was talking to a colleague of mine in DC, and what he was saying is, a lot of their struggle with the tariffs right now is that they've had contracts put in place to source materials and inputs. There's a manufacturing company that for 5-6 years, right? So like they can't just necessarily pull out of existing contractual agreements to get your widget from another place at this time. But and again, there is an opportunity, and something that we're helping clients with is revisiting those contractual agreements as well. Do they have to be that far in advance? Do you have to source for as long of a period of time as you may have done earlier? Because what we're finding now is, if you are a sophisticated manufacturing operation, you've got contracts in place that, are, years and years and years, out front, so that exactly, where you're going to be sourcing from, right? So part of this is also taking a look at those contractual agreements and figuring out, in the future, how do you go about, either providing out clauses, in the event of, tariff or trade wars, whatever that looks like. But that's another piece of this that, and I think, for your listeners, their GC offices probably should start taking a look at those contractual agreements as well.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Is this fun for you guys? Like from a professional standpoint, is this fun? Like this chaos?
I mean, it definitely. I don't know if fun's the word. I mean, I would rather be skiing, but I do think like from an intellectual curiosity perspective, yes, this does, it is a new world out there. And so, I've always thrived in my practice in dealing with heavily regulated industries and industries that are kind of at the tip of the spear. Like I did a lot of cannabis work, for example, and that's like a brave new world. Nobody knows what's going on, right? And we're like literally building the plane as we're flying it. And so I actually kind of appreciate some of these types of trade issues where, stuff that we haven't had to revisit in years, we're now starting to take a second look at. So that I definitely appreciate. I don't know if fun's the right word, but like in terms of intellectual curiosity, for sure.
Yeah, I think the answer is from a trade lawyer's perspective, and there's two things we also have to mention too, of course, is that we both provide legal advice, but we also engage in the government relations side too, which does try to give some perspective on peeking around the corners, if you will, and also kind of being able to see where we might see opportunities to help clients, for example, if their products are still being covered by tariffs, how might we start positioning them to be excluded or exempted if such a process were to begin, which, again, looking at the first Trump administration, there was no exclusion process. That was a result of an appropriations request to put that in. And so therefore that's where that kind of came from. Could a similar type of process become available? I think it's probably almost yes, considering the fact that the president had to get involved personally with lobbying to not have the Congress vote against the Canadian tariffs. So, I think that's probably not far-fetched in a 2-seat majority in the House. Probably we're going to see something like that. We have the use of trade laws from a person who's been practicing over about 20 years and who's worked both at Commerce Department and at the International Trade Commission, working on unfair trade cases. I think it's been a masterful use of the trade laws in a way that they were probably never envisioned, that that legislators never really envisioned how they'd be used. And I think they're being used, very efficiently and in some ways effectively for policy drivers. Whether or not you agree with the policy or not, I'm not saying I agree with that either way. Just to your question on an academic standpoint, if you will, a legal standpoint, jurisprudence, I think it's interesting to see how the laws are being used to affect different policy changes. And it is fun. Unfortunately, there's expression of controversy breeds capital. So I guess the capital that we're looking at here is the capital of opportunity. And I think that that's really what has been kind of fun for me and for Joe, has been looking at clients that we hadn't been speaking to, and other attorneys in the firm where they're sending us questions because their clients are most concerned about this. We see this a lot with real estate development projects, for example. You need lumber, nails, concrete, and other items to build something. And if you're in the midst of a project, you're now all of a sudden very concerned about what's going on with my raw materials that are going into this project. So we get questions like that a lot, and it's good to be able to sit with the clients and also try to help them navigate. So yeah, I think it's fun. I think it's engaging. It's also uncertain. So
yeah, no, I love it.
I was just going to say, Mark, I think what's also really interesting is, Michael actually jogged my memory a little bit because I'm in the middle of my own house renovation. And it was very unusual at the beginning of that process to hear literally from my general contractor that we need to be taking tariffs into account in terms of like the budgeting process for like our little attic renovation. Right. And I had to I had to smile and grimace at the same time because A, we did have to take that into account, and B, it was really interesting that like suddenly my, general contractor was talking about tariff issues in terms of how that, the rubber meets the road on our renovation. And, my own political barometer of how things are going in the country are obviously my parents. I think a lot of people have that as well. But, back in Dayton, Ohio, tariffs and trade are the talk of the town,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting to see how, this trade, which can be a bit esoteric and a little bit difficult to understand, has kind of reached the daily vernacular of everybody's lives here in the U.S. And I do find that to be absolutely fascinating. And I think we're going to see, as a result of that, some shifts in how, tariffs and trade policy are considered in Congress as well, because it's going to be less of a thing that happens in Washington and abroad, and more of a thing that actually impacts everyday Americans, in Dayton, Ohio. So I do find that to be a particularly fascinating piece of all of this.
Well, my wine importation has certainly slowed down just a little bit. But anyway, guys, thanks for this. This has been amazing. We've reached the point of Igniting the CEO Within, where we typically ask for our guest's I believe statement. So flipping it just a little bit, Michael, and I'll start with you. What do you see over the rest of 2025? What are you forecasting? And we'll hold you compared to Jared and Tim, because they did a pretty good job. So that's your standard right now.
Okay. Well, that's a pretty high standard to make. So I'll give this I believe statement. I believe that we will see a couple of very significant trade agreements announced, and obviously there will be there's a desire to get China worked out. I don't know that can actually happen from an economic standpoint, but I think there's a desire to get there. I believe we will see something with Japan and Korea soon. I also believe that watch Panama. That's the one I'll put there. There's a lot of strategic issues there. We've not heard a lot about Panama, but the global shipping routes over the fact that the Russian freighter navigated over the polar cap changes the security routes for global shipping. So I predict that we will see something with Panama as well that's going to try to preserve their strategic benefit and commercial value to the world, if you will. Less reliance on the Suez. So
awesome. Thank you. Joe, what do you believe?
I believe that we're going to see a shift in the pace of trade policy moving forward. I believe things will slow down slightly as the markets took a bit of a dive with the announcement of tariffs a month ago, I guess it was. I think Trump started to lose the support of the finance bro community that had so for very long been right at his back, pushing him forward. And once folks started losing money in their 401ks, boomers especially, who are reaching that retirement age where they can't necessarily continue to invest and outlive or outlast a market downturn, I think that is going to start impacting how the president views tariff policy moving forward. I also believe that these first few, I would say, signal votes that we've seen from the U.S. Senate and Finance Committee on tariffs are going to be a telltale sign of things to come in terms of how Congress reacts to the president's tariff policy moving forward. I do think, even though, and we didn't really get into this, but the tie between tariff policy, trade policy, and the tax bill that Ways and Means and Senate Finance are undertaking, there is clearly a direct link there. Not just in the fact that it's the same committees doing both areas of policy, but I do think that you're going to see some folks, especially when Congress goes home for August recess, I think they're going to hear a lot from constituents about how this is raising prices, how this is causing shifts in jobs, et cetera. And once members of Congress start to hear, I think, from their constituents, that's going to be a direct line to the president. And I think that's going to maybe slow things down a little bit. So I do think things are a little bit frenetic at the moment, but I do think they'll maybe even out a little bit more from September and beyond. And also think about, Mark, in DC, we think about these like weird political time windows. Members will start campaigning for the midterm elections basically starting in September of this year, right? So the president has between now and September to really go full, vor into whatever policies he's looking at. But once September hits, that's really when members of Congress are going to be campaigning, razor slim majorities for Republicans in the House and the Senate. Senate is a particularly difficult animal for Republicans in 2026 because of just how many Republicans they have to defend of the people who are for reelection. So there's a lot going on, I think, politically that, the Trump administration is going to want to preserve those majorities in 2026, or else the last 2 years of his administration are going to be his cabinet members under subpoena by Democrats. So there'll be nothing getting done, right? So that's something to keep as folks are looking out in the future, something to keep in mind.
Okay, quick question. Do you believe that a tax bill gets done before August?
No. Maybe I've been in DC too long and I'm a little bit cynical. I think that there's a lot going on, right? Especially with trade policy. Again, Ways and Means is doing both. They're doing tax and trade. Tax bill has to originate out of Ways and Means. I think Chairman Smith is a remarkably talented and great chairman, but I do think that he's going to be holden to leadership's time schedule on this and all the other things that are going on in DC that are going to kind of take a little bit of a front seat to the nuts and bolts of creating tax legislation. I would love to see it before August. I think members would love to be able to go into August recess, Republicans, and say that they had a victory by passing out tax legislation. I just remain a little bit skeptical that there's enough time between now and then to get it done.
Yeah. Michael, how about you?
Joe and I also represent some clients in the tax space as well. And so we are also engaged in that issues as well. But I think that it would take some, I don't think it happens by August. And I think if there is a desire by if there's some mental gymnastics that happens and if there is some potential changes in the accounting mechanisms by which we score the bill, mainly around the fact that we've already collected $17 billion in tariffs, that if we decide to figure out a way to have those tariff revenues, which go to the general treasury, somehow count towards the cost of the tax bill to offset some parts of that, you might see the tariffs continue, particularly on certain countries. But yeah, I think of getting a bill done by August with respect to the massive cuts that are going to happen into Medicaid and Medicare. I would be very, I think we're already seeing that members are hesitating on some of these things. So I think August is a real generous time frame, but I don't think it would happen by then.
Got it. Guys, this has been awesome. I am so appreciative of you guys taking your time and providing your insights. I am over the moon with our relationship with Ice Miller. They've been a great strategic partner of mine and Quaid's since the beginning. So thanks again for taking your time and giving us some insights and some opportunities and challenges that are out there that we can react to. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. This has been such a great opportunity, I think, not just for Michael and I, but just for the firm too. So appreciate your looking to us and look forward to talking to you again, maybe in the future.
I think we bring you and Tim and Jared, you guys and Tim and Jared together at the end of the year, and we just start ticking. Yeah. We do.
Well, yeah. Thank you again too for having us today, and I agree with everything Joe just said. So I think he said it very eloquently. So I'll associate myself with the comments from the gentleman from Dayton. So thank you very much.
Perfect. Well, again, thanks. I appreciate y'all. Gang, our time has come to an end on this episode of Igniting the CEO Within. I hope we've provided some useful insights for you and your businesses. If you like what you heard today, check out the rest of our episodes where we share a lot of paths that our Quaid allies take into the world of entrepreneurialism and the CEO seat. So until next time, I'm Mark McFatridge. I'll see you soon. Thank you for joining today's conversation. If our discussion has sparked your interest in our community of unapologetically authentic leaders, head on over to QuaidCircle.com, where you can learn more about Quaid and take our exclusive CEO Mindset Assessment to help elevate your leadership journey.
Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform and leave a review to help us continue delivering valuable insights and inspiring stories from top business leaders.